So, I've been thinking about this concept video whatever for a really long time now. Painting while I rant about movies and other things I like. That's kind of one of my favorite hobbies. So, why not start doing it for YouTube? And what better way to start off this possible series, thingamabobber or whatever the fuck, is the most clickbaity meme-worthy movie right now, Bird Box. And trust me, I really do have a lot to say about it. So get your popcorn, get ready. This video is going to go over Bird Box spoilers, by the way. You have been warned. You can obviously still watch this video if you'd like, but be warned. Okay. Something I appreciated about this movie was the acting. Sandra Bullock and the guy from Moonlight did a really good job from what they've been given. And John Malkovich is good too, even though I've heard mixed reviews on this performance. But since I hadn't seen him from anything else, I thought this was pretty great. I also really enjoyed the premise from what it was supposed to be. Sure, we already had The Quiet Place and The Happening, but that didn't stop this movie from being a great concept entirely. What did ruin it for me, however, was the writing. I have no idea what was going on in the writers' minds when they were making this, but it was subpar at best. There are 2 points in time. 5 years ago, when the apocalypse begins, and we have a ragtag group of characters trapped in a house, and the present day, where Sandra Bullock and her 2 children have to go downstream blindfolded to find this safe haven. There were some really weird points of this movie that felt really out of place, and the lines didn't make sense, and there were some actions that the characters did that didn't really help them in any way at all, and again, didn't make sense. Speaking of the characters, they're all tropes, literally all of them. The acting was great still, but that doesn't stop the characters from being basic and lame. Every time we would go back in time to the beginning of the apocalypse and we saw our group of characters, it brought me back to Telltale's The Walking Dead. They basically felt like recycled characters from the first season of that game, but written much worse. Mallory was a stoic protagonist who had a hard time opening up to people. Douglas is the alcoholic old guy who's such an asshole. Tom is the charismatic hero type who will help anyone and everyone. Olympia, fuck Olympia by the way, I really just can't stand her, sorry, is the naive girl who wants to help everyone, but she keeps messing up, and there are many, many more tropes like this. Don't even get me started, by the way, on the bury your gays trope with Greg, and also the black comic relief character who dies first in Charlie. They really did go from Voltron to Bird Box with, really controversial tropes, didn't they? What the fuck, Netflix? The movie also expects us to empathize with these characters when they eventually die, but we don't really have a reason to care. We know they're going to die because we're only focused on Mallory and the kids on the river and the future scenes. If it was written in a linear format, then maybe this would have made more sense and it would have been executed better. Logistically, there were also parts of this movie that didn't make sense to me either. A minor detail I kept noticing was the inconsistency of the blood. First, it's a slow-moving oozy pool, but in another scene it's like translucent, watery jam. I have no idea, and I can't buy into it at all. A bigger thing I kept thinking about was the fact that that boy should be dead. Sandra Bullock's character was pushed over by ongoing survivors more than once, drank whiskey, underwent tons of stress, was in a car accident, and her son turns out okay in the pregnancy. Not only that, but later in the movie, he falls into freezing water twice and is warmed up by only Sandra Bullock's jacket. I was really convinced that Sandra's child was going to be a miscarriage, and Olympia would have been misinformed and have twins instead. But apparently all logic on pregnancy doesn't really exist in this universe, so we might as well just throw that out of the window. Oh, oops. I just realized that it said, okay. Sorry, Olympia. Oopsie poopsie. Okay. Sorry, I'm off script for a second. Oops. The themes for this movie were also somewhat wacky for me. People online kept saying that this was about Sandra Bullock's fear of motherhood, but I saw it as her fear of social interaction and bonds in general, and that's what made sense to me. Her paintings were supposedly about her self-projected loneliness. She had her sister get groceries for her, and she's too scared to leave the house to see a doctor. We also get her backstory with Ryan, presumably Sandra's baby daddy, and how he left her as a single mother-to-be. That's what made sense to me as a theme. So, in the end, what didn't make sense to me was Sandra and Tom getting a romance plot. Like, yeah, it's been 5 years when we see them. I get it on, I guess, but it feels like the seeds in their romance are plotted a couple days after the apocalypse starts entirely, which, again, doesn't make sense. Plus, even with the whole motherhood theme there being a thing, it felt much more ham-fisted in the end. And don't even get me started on the kids being named boy and girl. That's just really stupid. My friend and I actually decided to name them Roy and Carl instead. It was a better step up to the names that they had been blessed with by Sandra Bullock. Plus, why would Tom let her do that anyway? He doesn't seem like the character to give them names like boy and girl. They would have more meaning behind them. So that in itself is also very confusing. Going back to the relationships in this movie, when I was first watching the movie, I thought Sarah Paulson and Sandra Bullock were a domestic couple, because they had that kind of chemistry on screen. I didn't realize until the hospital scene that they were siblings, so I was really confused. Then, later on, Tom calls Sandra his hot babysitter. And then they get it on. What? Okay, Again, the 5 years later thing, sure, that's fine. But that's still really fucking weird. I don't understand it, and I'm flabbergasted. Okay. I guess the one relationship I really did like in this movie was the relationship between John Malkovich and Sandra Bullock, because I'm mostly a huge sucker for the assholes to friends dynamic. The monster is also really confusing because it doesn't have a physical form, and it's said to be a clusterfuck of your greatest fears if you look at it, which is cool, but then it's strong enough to push over trees and pull on beds, and it can whisper to you. I don't understand what they were going for entirely. There's also a few locations issues I have. The story starts in suburban California, but where in America are they that has a river and lake houses and an academy for the blind? Things like times and whereabouts were a recurring issue for me. How far north of California did they go to get to where they were 5 years later? Again, it didn't make sense. This is an ongoing theme here. I don't know if you can tell. Something I did respect that the movie did, however, was the fact that they kept Sandra Bullock alive in the end of the movie. For the longest time, it felt like it was so predictable for them to kill her off immediately after she regains boy and girl's trusts with her. But they didn't. I remember watching what the director said about how the ending shouldn't be bleak. They had to ensure that there can still be a happy ending in the apocalypse or something like that. So I thought that was nice. The movie itself is called Bird Box in a metaphorical standpoint, and a literal standpoint too. The literal is that Sandra Bullock keeps these birds in a box to help them when there's danger nearby, and the metaphor is that the human race is blind until they feel safe enough to open their eyes or to leave the box, which is a nice concept if only the literal made sense too. It seemed as though our characters knew they were in danger even without the birds, plus the birds don't even chirp at all when they actually are in danger, or for the most part they don't. They don't chirp when Gary is first let into the house. They don't chirp when Sandra and the kids are trapped in the woods. The movie just tried to make us forget that the birds were even a concept, which it's pretty hard to do since the movie's called Bird Box. The painting is, well, the birds in the box. I was done with Utrecht designer gouache, and the outlining was done with Sakura Micron pens. Gouache is still a medium that I'm trying to get used to still, but I'm proud of how this turned out. I suck at birds, but practice makes perfect in the end, I guess. And the painting itself is a bit mediocre, but couldn't you say the movie is also a bit mediocre too? I'm gonna rate Bird Box a solid 5 out of 10. Perfectly mediocre. Some things done well, but there's still a lot of things that kept it from getting a better rating. It really just expected us to forget about logic. Let me know if you want me to do more of these. I really like them, so I probably will do them anyway. So, yeah, your input's still important too. That's all that matters to me. So with that, bye!